All right, so today we're diving deep into something pretty incredible. Surah Al-Imran, that third chapter in the Quran. It's this amazing guide for the early Muslims back in Medina. And honestly, it's just as relevant for us right here, right now.
Yeah, and what makes Surah Al-Imran super interesting is that it's a Madani surah, which means it was revealed after the Prophet migrated to Medina.
Oh, okay, I see.
And so it's really engaging with all these different perspectives, especially from the people of the book,
Yeah.
the Christians and Jews who were living in Medina at that time.
Oh, wow. So it's like this direct dialogue with different faiths.
Exactly.
Fascinating. And it's not just like a standalone piece either, right?
It's not, no. It forms what's called a luminous pair, called Zarawan, with Surah Al-Baqarah, which is the second chapter.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yeah. So they're like deeply connected.
Yeah, suggesting this profound and interconnected wisdom.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and think about this. The revelation of Surah Al-Imran took place over about 6 years.
Wow, 6 years.
6 very pivotal years in early Islam.
Okay, so like a really formative time.
Imagine the context.
Hmm.
You have the aftermath of the Battle of Badr, then you have the visit of the Najran Christian delegation, and of course the trials and tribulations of the Battle of Ufayn.
So it's like woven into the fabric of these major historical events.
Right, which shows us that this surah wasn't just some theoretical concept. It was like a practical, divine response to what was happening in the real world.
Okay, so for this deep dive, I guess our mission is to really extract those key life lessons and, like the core theological foundations from Surah Al-Imran. And the goal is to see how they can give us some, I don't know, like tangible insights for how we live our lives today.
Exactly. And I think a great place to start is with the very heart of it all, Tawhid, the oneness of Allah.
Perfect. Let's start there.
So you have this powerful declaration in verse 3.2 that says, "No deity worthy of worship except Allah, the ever-living, the sustainer of all that exists."
Okay, powerful words.
This is the ultimate truth, and it completely negates shirk, which is the idea of associating any partners with Allah.
So it's like a singular focus.
Exactly, a single focus.
And it's not just about like one God.
No, it goes much deeper than that.
Yeah.
It's the oneness of his being, his absolute lordship over everything. We call that rububiyah, his exclusive right to be worshipped, which is uluhiyah, and his unique names and attributes, known as Asma wa al-Sifat.
Whoa, okay, a lot to unpack there. So it's
Yeah.
like a single, like indivisible reality behind everything.
Exactly.
That's pretty profound.
So if you think about how this impacts your daily life, Tawhid is like constantly recalibrating your internal compass towards the one true north. Every single decision you make, every intention you have, whether it's big or small, is ultimately oriented towards this single purpose.
Yeah.
Submitting to Allah.
That's a really powerful image. It's like getting rid of all those distractions, all those things pulling you in different directions.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about Tawhid. Let's talk about divine revelation, because Surah Al-Imran sheds a lot of light on the Quran's role in this whole thing.
Yeah, it does. The surah explains that the Quran was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad with truth, and it confirms the core messages of earlier scriptures, like the Torah and the Gospel.
Right.
These earlier books served as guidance for their specific time,
Mm-hmm.
but the Quran, it's presented as Al-Furqan.
Al-Furqan.
Yeah, it means the criterion. It's the ultimate guide that distinguishes what's right and wrong.
I see. So it's like the definitive instruction manual.
Right. Think of it like the final, complete edition, divinely protected and clarifying and even sometimes superseding the guidelines that came before.
Yeah.
Now, this doesn't mean we disrespect earlier messengers or scriptures,
No, of course not.
but it establishes the Quran as the ultimate source of guidance for Muslims.
Okay, so respect the journey, but follow the final instructions. Makes a lot of sense. Now, Surah Al-Imran also talks about what it means to really have faith, right? Like, it's got to be more than just saying you believe.
Absolutely. True belief, as it's laid out in the surah, is about sincere worship that's directed only towards Allah. It's actively avoiding any form of shirk.
Gotcha.
And obedience to Allah and his messenger. That's fundamental.
Right.
Life itself is presented as a continuous test, constantly urging you to be steadfast in your faith. It's about aligning your actions with your beliefs.
So it's faith in action, not just faith in words.
Exactly, faith in action. And genuine faith involves this deep trust in Allah's wisdom, even when you don't understand the reasons behind his commands.
That's tough sometimes.
It can be. It's about consciously aligning your will with the divine will.
Makes sense. Okay, so we have faith as a way of life. What about the ethical and moral guidance in Surah Al-Imran? Are there any key things that stand out there?
Oh, there are a lot. Patience, for example,
Hmm.
or sabr in Arabic, is a major theme in Surah Al-Imran. But it's not passive waiting.
Oh.
It's actively persevering in your duties,
Mm-hmm.
consciously restraining yourself from doing things that are wrong, and enduring any hardships with resilience.
Okay, so it's a lot more active than just, sitting around and being patient.
Exactly. The surah even talks about musabara. It means striving to surpass others in patience. And then there's murabatha, which is about remaining steadfast in your commitment.
Wow, I never thought of patience like that. So what other ethical principles does Surah Al-Imran highlight?
Well, unity is a big one. The surah calls on you to hold firmly to the rope of Allah, which is the Quran,
Okay.
and to avoid any kind of division. It emphasizes the strength that we find in brotherhood and mutual support.
Very relevant for today.
And then there's piety, or taqwa. It's about this constant awareness of Allah, striving to please Him in all that you do and avoid anything that might displease Him.
So like always being mindful.
Yes, exactly. And the surah highlights this as the very criterion for how worthy you are in God's eyes.
Powerful stuff. Now, Surah Al-Imran also uses historical stories to teach lessons, right? Like
Yeah.
the Battle of Uhud.
Absolutely. And what's really interesting about how the surah looks at the Battle of Uhud is that, despite the Muslims having an initial victory, the archers disobeyed a direct command from the Prophet.
Oh, right. I remember that story.
And that led to a major setback.
Yeah.
So the core lesson here is the importance of obedience to leadership.
Whether that's a divine leader or like someone in a position of authority, it's still about following instructions.
Exactly. And the surah also highlights the potential consequences of putting personal gain above following clear instructions.
That's a timeless lesson, It applies to so many different situations in life.
It really does.
Okay, and what about warnings or reminders? Does Surah Al-Imran have anything to say about that?
Absolutely. It constantly reminds you that worldly possessions are temporary, but the rewards of the hereafter, those are eternal.
Makes sense.
And it cautions you against being deceived by things like wealth and status.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in all that.
It is. That's why the surah emphasizes prioritizing righteousness and, focusing on the everlasting bliss of paradise.
So in essence, Surah Al-Imran is like a complete roadmap for living a life of purpose and meaning.
Precisely. All these core principles we've talked about, Tawhid, the importance of divine guidance through the Quran, the essence of lived faith, and those key ethical virtues like patience and unity.
It's a lot of profound and timeless wisdom.
It is.
Well, this has been a truly eye-opening deep dive. Now, for everyone listening, here's a final thought for you to ponder. Think about how the principle of Tawhid, that absolute oneness of Allah, could practically reshape the choices you make every day. And your priorities in a world that's constantly trying to pull you in so many different directions.
Yeah, that's a powerful question to reflect on.
It really is. It makes you examine where your loyalties truly lie.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Surah
It
Al-Imran.
was my pleasure.
And until our next exploration, may you all be well.